There we go. Here we go.
Good morning, everyone. What a difference a day makes. Welcome to the Gloucester Unitarian Universalist Church's service, which is being brought to you this morning on Zoom. We returned to our old style of doing the services this morning, as you can see, because of the storm, so that nobody had to figure out how to get their cars out and where to put them once they got to the church. So I hope that you all came through yesterday just fine, and that we can just enjoy the beauty of this day and not be struggling against it. Back when we first began our experiment with Zoom services in March of 2020, I joked at the time that going forward there would be no such thing as a snow day. We used to cancel on days like this because Gloucester would have a snow emergency and we would have no parking. So at any rate, we are no longer dependent on Gloucester's decision to have a snow emergency, and so here we are. As always, so that folks can follow along from home, we have included the order of service in the Friday's congregational email, if you want to take a second to open that up and follow along with us. And I also invite you to go find a chalice or a candle to light so that we can have our ritual together in spirit, if not in person. And quickly, before I forget, I wanted to mention that this week I will be attending a conference virtually. I had long planned to fly to San Diego for this conference, but frankly, at the moment, I'm just as glad I'm not figuring out how to get to the airport today. So I will be in town, but I will be spending almost all my time at the conference. And now Pat Johnson has a few announcements.
Good morning, everybody.
This week is the meeting of our community book group, our community read on February 4th. The book that we've chosen is Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. The meeting will take place on Zoom. It will be at 10:30 a.m. This coming Friday. I don't think you need to have read the whole thing. It's a very long book, but there's already been a lot of lively conversation about it on the email group. So do please join us. If you need the link, contact Pat Cronin. Other adult programs are in the works as well. Today at 1 o'clock, we're invited to join in a Zoom book discussion organized by our friends at First Universalist of Essex. We'll be discussing The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. If you've read the book, you're welcome to join in. Please check with Reverend Janet for more information on that. Also coming up are two other programs. Lectio Divina with Reverend Janet is resuming on February 10th, this Thursday. And another discussion group led by the membership team will take place on February 16th. All the details about these are in last Friday's weekly announcements, so please have a look and plan on joining in. Finally, we've had some great news. This past Thursday evening, the City of Gloucester awarded $130,000 to the Gloucester Meeting House Foundation for the restoration of our alley. Congratulations, Charles Nazarian and Kathleen Williams, for your successful grant writing. That is no small thing. It's going to make a huge difference. Thank you so much for your work on behalf of the church. And now let us deepen our hearts and our spirits for worship.
Our opening words this morning are by Timothy Haley. Amid all the noise in our lives, we take this moment to sit in silence, to give thanks for another day, to give thanks for all those in our lives who have brought us warmth and love, to give thanks for the gift of life. We know that we are on our pilgrimage here, but a brief moment in time. Let us open ourselves here, now, to the process of becoming more whole, of living more fully, of giving and forgiving more freely, of understanding more completely the meaning of our lives here on this earth. Come, let us worship together. We make sacred our time together this morning by the kindling of our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith tradition. May our light shine brightly during these shortened days. May it warm us against the cold, and may it guide our way forward through the coming week. And we can take a moment now to affirm the covenant that we share with one another. If you know it by heart or if you have the words, please go ahead and recite it with me. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. I invite you now into a time of prayer to be followed by silent meditation. The first part of our prayer is by the Reverend Maureen Killeran. Spirit of life, source of all, I pray this day for the courage to be humble in the face of inequity and pain. To know that the power has been given to me to make a difference. Although not to end all suffering or to save all the problems that populate our days. I pray for the courage of endurance, to keep acting in the midst of despair, to keep trying in the aftermath of failure, to keep hoping in the emptiness that follows loss or change. May courage give me patience, and may I ever know love's healing presence at the heart and center of all my days. Spirit of life, may all those we love also know that healing presence now when so much is being asked of us here in this harsh time of year. May they and we know solace and comfort. May we all know compassion and grace and love. All this we ask in your name, which is love, as we enter into silence. Amen. Amen. Our first reading is by Audre Lorde. If you come as softly as wind within the trees, you may hear what I hear, see what sorrow sees. If you come as lightly as threading dew, I will take you gladly, nor ask more of you. You may sit beside me, silent as a breath. Only those who stay dead shall remember death. And if you come, I will be silent, nor speak harsh words to you. I will not ask you why now, or how, or what you do. We shall sit here softly beneath two different years, and the rich earth between us shall drink our tears. Here ends our reading.
We've been fortunate during this COVID surge to be able to continue to offer our services each week. We were so close to restoring everything back to normal, and now we've had to take a step back. But we're grateful we haven't had to step all the way back. We can't take up our regular offering this morning. If you are able to do so, I invite you to go to the church's website, gloucesteruu.org, and donate just hitting the Give button in the top right corner of the homepage and following the prompts. It's very easy. If 25 people don't try to do it at the same time, it won't get hung up. And it's a nice way to show the church that you care. We're here continuing to hold and sustain our beloved community and try to make a difference in everyone's lives throughout this time. Thank you for your generosity. The second reading is from the Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. Barbara Kingsolver's novel, The Poisonwood Bible, tells the story of a Southern Baptist missionary from Georgia and his family who volunteered to live among a village in the Congo, just months before the country gains its independence. Because of the looming instability, they've been warned not to go. But the Reverend Price is not one for changing his mind. Our excerpt from the book is the story told by a teenage daughter of his attempts to baptize the villagers. She tells us, "It wasn't even real Easter. We arrived smack dab in the middle of summer. Father was disappointed about the timing until he made the shocking discovery that days and months do not matter one way or the other to the people in this village. So Father had nothing to lose by announcing his own calendar and placing Easter on the 4th of July. Why not? He said he needed a focal point to get the church geared up. Our great event for Counterfeit Easter Sunday was a pageant, organized by Father and whoever else could drum up enthusiasm. So far, for our first few weeks in Kalanga, attendance in church had been marked by almost total absence. So, when the men with their blood-stained spears came jingling down the aisle of our church pageant on Easter Sunday, it represented progress, I'm sure, but it was not what Father really hoped for. He had envisioned a baptism. The whole point of Easter in July was supposed to be an altar call, followed by a joyful procession down to the river with children all dressed in white getting saved. Father would stand waist deep out there like the Baptist St. John and hold up one hand, and in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost, he would dunk them under one by one. The river would be jam-packed with purified souls. But the men said no, that was not to be. The women were so opposed to getting dunked in the river, even on hearsay, they all kept their children extra far from the church that day. Afterwards, instead of the baptism, Father lured people down as near as he could get them to the river by means of the age-old method of a church supper. We had a picnic down on the bank of the Quilu, which has the delightful odor of mud and dead fish. So they all came grandly down to the picnic, women with their heads wrapped in print cloth like birthday presents, children wearing what few clothes they had. Yet Father's mind was 2 million miles away. He just mostly stared out at the river, where no one was fixing to get dunked that day whatsoever. I was sore at Father, all right, for us having to be there in the first place. But it was plain to see he was put out to something fierce. When he gets his mind set on something, you just as well prepare to see it through. The picnic was festive, but not at all what he'd had in mind. It was nothing in terms of redemption.
Thank you, Pat. If you come as softly as wind within the trees, you may hear what I hear, see what sorrow sees. If you come as lightly as threading dew, I will take you gladly, nor ask more of you. The Reverend Nathan Price, in Barbara Kingsolver's novel, The Poisonwood Bible, did not come as softly as wind within the trees, as lightly as threading dew. No, the Reverend Price was a person of great conviction, with utter confidence that his way was the one right way. His mission was to go to the Congo to bring people to Christ, to save their souls. And that was it, the entirety of his mission. The Poisonwood Bible is full of stories of Nathan Price's unwillingness to tread softly or lightly, his inability to listen or to learn. Shortly after the family's arrival in the Congo, he set out to plant a garden, just as they did in Georgia, with American seeds that he had brought with him. The gardeners among us can just imagine how that went. The African woman hired to help the family tried to tell Nathan Price that in that place you needed to plant your seeds in hills, not flat in the ground, in rows. He ignored her, and not long afterwards the rains came and washed the seeds right out of their little flat rows. Nathan Price had an utter lack of regard for the climate and context and culture of the people he had arrived to serve and to save. And his definition of salvation was eternal, in the next life, and he took virtually no interest in the daily needs of the humans around him. The story of his focus on baptism was central to the narrative, as it was his only goal and his intention for his year in the Congo. His daughter noted at the picnic by the river that instead of mingling with his people, getting to know them and their concerns, and enjoying the festive atmosphere, he gazed out at the river, angry and thwarted. Months after the failed attempt to move Easter so that he could baptize the village right away, Nathan Price was still making no headway in his attempts to bring people to the river. And at one point, to try to entice people to the river, he had a supply of dynamite flown in and had the men in the village drop the dynamite in the river in order to easily harvest fish. Apparently they do that in Georgia. But the sudden supply of fish was so overwhelming that after everyone had eaten their fill, they had no means of preserving any, and the remaining fish rotted on the riverbank. Finally, one Sunday after Price held forth yet again on the subject of baptism from his palm frond pulpit, the family's servant stomped home and quit. She would have nothing more to do with them. And she angrily told him the truth on her way out the door, that a young child had been snatched by a crocodile in the river not long before his arrival in the village. The villagers were not going to be baptized in the river that day or any other. We grew up hearing that old expression, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I imagine we generally have a good sense of what is meant by that even when we mean well, our intentions, our attempts can go terribly wrong. Now, when I was younger, I interpreted that saying in a very particular way, that often we intend to do a task or a project, get our homework done, help with dinner, paint the garage, and very often we simply wouldn't get around to achieving what we had intended to do. And so our perceived laziness, our lack of commitment, would be seen as not the righteous path, the successful path, but the road to failure. But as so often happens when we examine old thoughts in more depth, we can see that much more is meant by this old expression. The tasks, I'm sorry, I've lost my place here, just a second. As so often happens when we examine old thoughts in more depth, we can see that much more is meant by this old expression. The tasks that we may or may not accomplish in a given day are goals, really, not intentions. Intentions, though, are a way of orienting ourselves, a way of making our lives, or making our way through the world. Our intentions answer this question: how do we want to live? If you come as softly as wind within the trees, you may hear what I hear, see what sorrow sees. Now, Nathan Price certainly had intentions. His intention was to save the souls of the entire village where he was serving. And he would have argued that this would be the most important action he could ever take for the people in the village, to offer them eternal life as he saw it. But his path was full of missteps at every juncture. He tried to demonstrate the safety and the bounty of the river so that people would embrace it, and ended up with piles of dead fish rotting in the African sun. Longtime Gloucesterites will remember what the impact of that intention would have been like. Unlike Reverend Price, We must always consider what the impact of our intentions are likely to be. This is always a challenge, because to do this well, we must always be aware of the needs of the people we might impact. Our lives are full of instances when our best intentions fall short. And I'm sure each and every one of us can think of several examples right now. And if you're like me, you might feel like wincing now and again. We make mistakes. We assume we know the best way to achieve a goal. We think we know the right thing to say in a tough situation. For example, we try to offer our condolences and say things such as, God never gives anyone something they can't handle. As an aside, promise me that you never will say that. Often we intend to offer a compliment, but it can be taken as an insult. We might not know much about the person's circumstances, so we assume our intended compliment will be appreciated. I remember the time when I was working as a church administrator, and I happened to join that congregation one Sunday for a service. It was a suburban church full of high academic achievers. At coffee hour, someone approached me and said, "Are you the one who edits the newsletter?" And hearing that I did, she remarked, "Well, I've wondered. It's always so grammatically correct." She was intending to compliment me. I know that. But instead, I heard, "Wow, who would have thought that someone in your position uses good grammar?" This is an example of what is known as a microaggression. And these happen all the time, although the term is most often used to describe the experiences of people of color. Basically, a microaggression is what we've always called a backhanded compliment. And while I have light skin and have never experienced the kinds of microaggressions that my siblings of color do, I do understand, in a limited way, how it feels. Imagine being told by a store clerk that you couldn't afford what you were buying, as happened in Marshall's here in Gloucester a couple of years ago. Perhaps the clerk thought they were being helpful. But how insulting. As we end our month of focusing on living with intention, I am calling on all of us to take a look at our intentions toward other people. We are being asked to consider our good intentions and the impact that they might have on others. We can think of this as unintended consequences, such as dynamiting fish out of a river with no means to preserve them. Or the consequence, the impact of planning to lead people into a river intending to save them and risking their lives in doing so. How do we bring our good intentions to our relationships with each other, and especially towards our siblings of color? Are there ways of orienting ourselves so that our intentions come from a place of understanding what is really needed instead of from our assumptions? How does this impact our anti-racism work? What I'm really asking is, how can we learn to intend the best for each other without creating negative or hurtful impacts? And the clue can be found in our reading by Audre Lorde. If you come as softly as wind within the trees, you may hear what I hear, see what sorrow sees. If you come as lightly as threading dew, I will take you gladly, nor ask more of you. Come softly, come lightly. In other words, enter people's lives slowly and respectfully. Lead with empathy and imagination for what their lives might be like. Give yourself the time and the space to pause and imagine the other person's life and whether or not what you are about to say or do will be helpful. Do you remember the phrase that I learned in my service work in Louisiana? What does help look like to you? Can you feel the sorrow of a village who has lost a child? Can you imagine how you would feel when someone thinks they are paying you a compliment, but the impact is one of an insult? How do we gain the empathy and understanding to be able to imagine what another's life is like? It is lifelong work. We will always have good intentions, and we will always make mistakes, all of us. But if we embrace the intention of listening carefully and learning as much as we can about the lives of others, we will find ourselves on a different path, a path toward connection and understanding and empathy. You may sit beside me, silent as a breath. And if you come, I will be silent. We shall sit here softly. Let us not begin with intentions of doing good or helping or making friends. Let us begin with intentions to listen more than we speak, to allow ourselves to be silent, to humbly assume we have much to learn, and to be guided by our hearts. May it be so. Amen. And now, as we prepare to return to our separate lives for the week ahead, may the spirit of love guide your thoughts and actions. May faith sustain you, and may hope enliven your vision. May you leave this time prepared to serve, with your hearts open so you may grow in spirit. May you all be blessed. Amen, and blessed be. And now I invite you to hold up your candle and together we will blow them out as we say the words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. May you go in peace and return in love. Blessed be. I'm going to invite Owen now to unmute everybody so that anyone who wishes to can stay and say hello and process the storm and everything else. So looking forward to chatting for a few minutes here. Thank you to Pat and to Steve and to Owen for all that they did to make our service happen this morning.
Yeah.
Hi,
Our
Jesse.
pleasure.
We do it one way or another every single week.
Yeah.